A lot of people don't know that the passkey technology that you're seeing coming out of a lot of different apps right now was actually first piloted by ICP. Well, ICP's actually just done another world first thing, which is essentially allowing you to use hardware wallets to sign off for things in insecure environments that's still going to keep you safe and protect you. So this is a little bit of a nuanced topic, but it's really, really cool and could have massive wide-reaching implications for security. So I want to talk about this today. We're going to go on, discuss all of that. But first off, we're just going to do a super quick update talking about ICP price, what's going on with the chart, all of the different things since we have seen those rate cuts happen just today. We're going to be taking a look at kind of all the things that are going on. So first off, you can see here, a bit of a mixed market. We are seeing some things pump in a limited capacity since the news of the rate cuts. We can see here ICP down 0.2%, so not really too much, but you can see week, month, year. It's all red basically. So ICP has had definitely a rough 2025 so far. But what we can see is, potentially there is that turning of the corner with the Fed cutting rates. With the Fed cutting rates, we are essentially pivoting into more of a rate cutting cycle, which should hopefully make money a little bit cheaper, not cheaper, and push people out on the risk curve, which is of course going to be a very, very important and substantial thing. Now, if we look at ICP's price, again, kind of per usual, nothing really too special happening. We're continuing to hold up this level of support kind of towards the bottom of towards actually the very top of this kind of high liquidity zone. We could see bounces all the way down to about $4.10, or I guess dips, but realistically that should hold up. If it doesn't hold up, things are very, very bad for ICP. Also, kind of likewise, no moves to the upside really matter too much until we have seen a sustained break through that $6.30 range. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on this and see how it ends up working out. But at least for right now, nothing really too crazy happening on ICP. It's just kind of range bound. And obviously it is boring. It does suck, but generally this does lead to some level of breakout in one direction or the other. The longer it consolidates, usually the bigger the breakout it is. But again, we just don't know for sure. So I'm not guaranteeing anything. Of course, I do not have a crystal ball or any ability to tell the future. So this is just kind of my assumption and drawing patterns based off of things that we have seen out of other cryptos in the past. Now, moving along, I just want to focus on the Fed pivot really quick, because this is, of course, a big deal and it does matter a lot for ICP, because ICP has kind of struggled in this environment and it will need some euphoria and some interest around alt season to, I think, help kick it off a little bit. And so what we can see here, the Fed just confirmed the pivot. We just saw a 25 basis point rate cut. The median projection shows 50 basis points more in 2025. So again, that is essentially 25 in the next meeting and then 25 in the meeting after is kind of exactly how they were planning on having that go. We'll see, that still kind of remains to be seen here. A lot can change, as you've seen, from kind of week to week, much less, 6 weeks from now when the next meeting is. So we can see this FOMC statement now flags downside risks to employment have risen and inflation is still elevated. So essentially we'll just have to kind of see the general sentiment here. Again, lots of really interesting things. It's very, very hard to say exactly what the impacts will be here for crypto in the crypto space, because usually cutting rates into inflated or elevated inflation, not necessarily a bad idea, but we have seen a lot of fundamental economic data start to struggle. So there's kind of a catch-22 there. Now, moving along, I want to talk about the news of the day today, which is essentially this ICP capabilities is essentially what they're calling it. So we can see here, we'll start with the commentary from Dominic and then we'll actually move into the announcement itself. We can see, this reflects a trend towards ICP capabilities, which internet identity will sign to. These will allow insecure apps to securely execute security sensitive actions for you, where you sign off on them, e.g. transfer Bitcoin, make a trade, vote, file taxes, register account, etc. And an app hosted on a very low cost, low security 4-node subnet could manage, for example, Bitcoin for you, hosted on a high cost, high security subnet with 50 plus nodes from independent parties. Apps can only perform sensitive actions that you have signed in a plain language capability for. Capabilities will enable system architecture to achieve optimal cost versus security trade-offs. In the foregoing example, the on-chain app is hosted relatively cheaply, but if it gets hacked, the Bitcoin it manages for its users remains secure. Here's a good technical intro. We'll skip on that, for example, or for right now. But this is essentially kind of similar to how we have the internet right now, right? For example, a browser game, you may not be super like worried about security, right? Because it's like if it gets hacked, particularly if it's, you know, something that's like a single player thing, who really cares? I mean, maybe people will hack it and like, you know, cheat their scores up or whatever, but ultimately like that's a relatively low stakes type of environment. Banking, however, obviously it needs to be incredibly high security. Well, what ICP is doing right now with this type of announcement is essentially they're indicating like you can have kind of cheap, low cost stuff, and you can have expensive, high cost stuff that really does need to be truly secure. And so you can essentially kind of keep all the valuable stuff on the high security subnets, but still actually kind of do most of the things that you want to do in the low cost, low security places, but you're not actually taking any more risk for this. This is a really important thing because if we go into Bjorn's, and he's a researcher at Dfinity, you can see kind of a much more detailed example here. So essentially, as I mentioned, another world first feature that's been in the works for a bit, this is support with clear signing any transaction on ICP with your Ledger hardware wallet. Why, what, how, and all this type of stuff, right? So the distinguishing feature, and this is what's really, really important here. The distinguishing feature of a hardware wallet is that it allows you to validate the details of a transaction on a trusted device before you decide to sign off on it. Even if your computer is infested with malware and remote controlled by Lazarus, as long as you validate the transaction details. Even if your computer is infested with malware and remote controlled by Lazarus, as long as you validate the transaction details on your hardware wallet, your funds are safe. To get to that level of security, hardware wallets have intentionally restricted functionality. They cannot connect to the internet, and apps installed need to be vetted for security. This makes update cycles somewhat slow and cumbersome by design. That's kind of the whole point, right? So now we can see here, though, is that one effect of this is that people have started to blind sign unsupported transactions with their hardware wallets. This, of course, undermines the entire security designed into them and leads people to losing funds despite using a hardware wallet. Blind signing should not even be an option. This is why we developed the generic clear signing method for ICP. At its core, this builds on chain key cryptography. Each smart contract can determine how the transaction it supports should be rendered, protected through canister signatures, and the hardware wallet validates correctness. The mechanism is super scalable. The network can easily support tens of thousands of such transactions per second. It's also easy to integrate for dApps since it builds onto the existing wallet integrations. What does that mean concretely, though? You will be able to do swapping, providing liquidity, lending, borrowing, everything that touches big amounts of your tokens with the full security of your Ledger hardware wallet. Keep control of your tokens at the highest level of security. Now, of course, this is very, very important. This is something that has generally been a little bit of a difficult situation for people in the past. Is it because hardware wallets are so difficult, keeping them and like doing anything on chain with them is generally quite challenging. And so what ICP is doing here is they found a way essentially to like pass along that signature in a secure way, in a way that is like easily to understand signing through your hardware wallet as well, right? So this is, of course, really important because it should and could potentially change the complete security architecture of crypto, allowing people to actually just use hardware wallets by default, which, of course, is going to help really massively cut down on many of these types of like hacks and trainings and all this type of stuff that we do see more than what we would prefer to see in the crypto space. So overall, I think it's a very, very interesting concept. I think as we saw prior with the passkey technology, actually registering like your device's signature, this was a thing kind of pioneered by ICP, the first to do it. It has made mainstream adoption. Now, the thing that I will kind of continue and maintain as the key risk here for ICP is that the technology that they produce is very good. I think the problem that they have, and this is something that is kind of, this was brought up in Dominic's post, is this integrates into their current existing ecosystem, right? The switching costs or the transfer costs of getting into the ICP ecosystem are ridiculously high, and up until this point have actually proven to be too high to actually develop any sort of meaningful use case or meaningful adoption from that wider community. This is of course a problem because how do you actually get people to use their project? Well, they actually need to use it, right? And so that is the thing that has been the major hiccup and concern so far. And this is something, especially after we go over the update that we saw yesterday, where Base has found a way to essentially direct, bridge, and integrate Coinbase and Base together. They're not locking you into their ecosystem, right? And so this is something that I think now more than ever is becoming a slight bit of concern here for the ICP ecosystem, is they have to find a way to lower these barriers and lower the switching costs here, even if it maybe comes at security and they can disclose that yes, like you can still use it, but like the security guarantees may not be as high. This still may be the ideal outcome for many ICP users and holders because they're allowed to slowly switch over time, and there's not such a massive switching cost. So this is something that, again, I maintain that is going to be a bit of an issue, because if other people continue to cherry pick the best integrations and inventions, from chain key cryptography to pass keys to the clear signing, all of this type of stuff, unfortunately, at some point, all of this will just kind of make it out into the mass market in a way where there aren't these high switching costs. And so, again, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm not trying to, spread FUD or anything like that, but I am just trying to have a very clear and realistic kind of expectation of what kind of needs to change, at least in my mind, as I see it, based on how it's going right now. I think integration, I think adoption, I think all of this is the key. And if we can't get it, essentially, if we can't start to work towards that direction, that I think the switching costs are probably just perpetually going to be too high. Now, some of the people who are coming into the ecosystem natively, having no outside experience, which, to be completely honest, is fair based on some of the partnerships that they have made, I think ICP could see a success rate there. But again, it just remains an issue. Well, how do you talk to the outside world outside of ICP? So I am very interested to see how this goes. Overall, though, the kind of the TLDR of this is that it's very, very interesting stuff. Of course, I don't think anybody doubts ICP or Dfinity's competency or ability to create these technological marvels. It's just the actual usage of them and getting people to actually use them in real life has so far been a little bit of a struggle. It's been other people effectively ripping off ICP's technology that have been able to do it with the most success so far. So overall, I'd be really interested in your comments here. Do you think I'm being too pessimistic? Do you think that, it's just a matter of time? Do you think that it doesn't really matter, right? No one even uses hardware wallets anyway, yada, 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 whatever. I'd love to hear all of your comments in the comment section below, and I'd love to hear your takes on kind of some of the recent updates that we have seen from ICP. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Also, if you did find the information in this video useful, a like, subscribe, all that type of stuff does, of course, really help out. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.